two more different kings there cannot be. In Herod, we find a pawn of the Roman Empire. In Christ, we find true God from true God consubstantial with the Father. In Herod, we find a man with a weak and tentative hold on his faith. In Christ, we find a man who is the complete fulfillment of the law and the prophets. In Herod, we find a man willing to slaughter innocents. In Christ, we find a man willing to be led away to the slaughter. In Herod, we find a man who is a liar. In Christ, we find a man who is truth incarnate. In Herod, we find despair. In Christ, we find hope. In Herod, we find death. In Christ, we find life. Two more different kings there cannot be, and the Magi would have told you the exact same thing. When they were first sent by Herod to find this new king, a ruler who was to shepherd the people Israel, they didn't know what they were going to encounter, but they knew it was going to be something special. That's what drew them out in the first place. Arriving from the east, they said, "Where is the newborn king of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage." They knew something was on the horizon. That this time they were living in, these moments in history, were different. Herod, he knew it too. And he sent them out to find him, but not so that he could do homage, but so that he could fortify his position, so that he could maintain the life he had grown accustomed to. And in order to achieve these ends, he was ready to kill a child because Herod is a coward. Herod didn't want things to change, so he was willing to do whatever it took to have things exactly the way that he wanted. This was the man who sent out the Magi. And once again, putting their trust in the guidance of the heavens, the Magi set out, and behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. And what they found? Well, they knew they had discovered something different, and their encounter with Christ changed them. That tends to happen with Christ. And after their encounter with Christ, the scriptures tell us that they departed for their own country by another way. They had to go another way. Not just so that they could avoid Herod, but to return to Herod was to return to what Herod represented. To return to Herod was to return to the ways of vanity and hatred and mistrust. To return to the ways of narcissism and self-indulgence and arrogance. To return to Herod was to return to a way of life that had no room in it for Christ. To return to Herod was to return to a way of life that had no room in it for humility or patience or understanding. It had no room in it for generosity or temperance or self-sacrifice. A way of life that had no room in it for the way of the cross. And make no mistake, friends, the way of Christ is the way of the cross. And it's there at that point, when the cross gets very real, very fast, that we can become skittish about discipleship. But brothers and sisters, this is the way. This is the only way. And it's important for us to understand this. Whoever does not pick up his cross daily and follow after me cannot be my disciple. Those are not my words. And it's also important for us to understand that these other ways, these old ways, these ways of the world, they ain't working. They never did. And this is what the Magi came to understand. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. And they prostrated themselves and did him homage. They walked in and they fell face first on the ground. It hit them like a bolt of lightning. It was as clear to them as that star they had been following around. They had what we would call an epiphany. Ha! And thus, they departed by another way. Their encounter with Christ changed their lives. And our encounters with Christ, they can do the same thing. And it's time. It's time to stop looking. It's time to stop running. You know what you want. You know what you desire. You want to be happy, truly happy, authentically happy. And there is only one thing that's going to make that a reality, or at least there's only one person who can make that a reality. Brothers and sisters, you desire Jesus. And I know that's what you desire because I know who it was who created us. I know what he created us for. And I know that he planted that desire deep into our hearts and into our minds, into our very souls. And if that desire to be with him, to know him, to love him, that desire to be truly and authentically happy, if that's what we want, then the time for half talk is over. The meager measures that we take, the minimalist approach towards discipleship that we practice, that can't be the standard anymore. We can no longer allow ourselves to be stuck in a casual, mediocre, and nominal relationship with Jesus Christ. We can't be okay with that. That kind of thinking must be abandoned at all costs, and in the end, that's not what Christ wants for you, not even close. Christ wants to be in a relationship with you, personal, intimate. He wants to be a part of your lives. He wants you to invite him in to everything. He wants to set your heart on fire for love of him, love of his church, love of your brothers and sisters. He wants you to become holy and virtuous and joyful because we have been called to something great, to something that this world cannot offer, to a life that will be mocked by the world, to a life that will not make headlines, but a life that will lead to salvation, to a life that will allow us to one day hear the most joyful words we could ever hear. Well done, good and faithful servant. Come share in your master's joy. That's one path. Or we can follow the path of Herod. A life of selfishness, decadence, corruption, anxiety, fear, loneliness, isolation, a life that leads to damnation, a life that ends with the most terrifying words we could ever hear. Depart from me. I never knew you. That is not what Christ wants for you. Is that what you want for you? I doubt it. And so I guess we need to ask ourselves, what do we do now? Are we going to continue the endless cycle of banality? The endless cycle of resisting happiness? Are we going to return to our old lives as if everything was the same? Or are we going to encounter Jesus and, like the Magi, are we going to choose another way?